Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Mike Porter, Methodist Healthcare Ministries, big salute for the work that they've been doing for a long time in South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley. Big salute to my new best friend in just 24 hours, Pete Delgado. And to Edinburg, got to meet with Mayor Ochoa multiple times before today, and now I get to meet with the rest of you. I am Dan Buettner Jr. You can call me 2.0. That's a joke. And I'm Chief Development Officer for Blue Zones. So I get the honor and privilege of coming and hanging out with folks like yourselves, a community like Edinburg, and to share an idea. An idea that's not my idea, not my father's idea, but an idea demonstrated by some of the longest lived people on earth. I'm sure many of you are here because you're curious about that idea. And many of you are here because you have some civic pride, some civic muscle. It's what you do. This is your hometown. So in exchange for your time, I'm going to give you three things. Number one, lessons from the longest lived people on earth. Number two, I'm going to give you a peek under the hood at this idea, how it's been expressed in other places across the country, in other communities, and get you thinking about how could that be expressed here. And then we'll have some fun and we'll do some Q&A so we can do a little exchange, which is of course why we're here. Because we want to understand if this is a good fit, yay or nay. And if yay, how does it become an Edinburg story? How does it become another chapter in the Edinburg book? And I loved everything I've heard so far, including recently the Freddie Gonzalez bike and hike trail being extended all the way to the UTRGV. So a lot of great things here that we're going to learn about. Blue Zones. Blue Zones, 20 years old, started out as a National Geographic partnership, investigative journalism. Going out and solving the mystery, are there longevity hotspots in the world? And if so, what is their secret? Well, that's a great story. We're going to talk about that story. We're going to talk about their lessons. They're called the Power 9, the 9 commonalities of the longest lived people on earth. But the even better story is the story of communities here in the United States that are operationalizing it to turn the tide on chronic disease, on depression, on isolation, on out of control costs, household costs, employer costs, community costs with healthcare. And one of the punchlines you'll hear over and over again is that we don't do this to communities. Blue Zones doesn't parachute in from out of town. This is a train the trainer model. Train the trainer model. So we empower, we provide the playbook, the evidence, the measurement, the certification, and then people are hired from Edinburg. Full-time jobs, steering committees, subcommittees, partners, nonprofits, schools, policymakers, and that's the apparatus that goes and causes the change. How many people have heard about Blue Zones before today? All right, about half. And how many people have seen our Netflix? All right, about 3 or 4 of you, okay. Well, some extra credit homework for those of you that are interested. You can go on Netflix and you can see our
what's the best
show.
tea to drink?
Here's a trailer.
Wine. I like the way you roll. I have found that most of what people think lead to a long, healthy life is misguided or just plain wrong. What if we could reverse engineer longevity? I spent the last 20 years trying to do just that. Is it okay if instead of looking for answers in test tubes, I found 5 places around the world called Blue Zones where people are living to 100 at the highest rates in the world. What is the secret to living a long time?
Community. If you're depressed, you're not going to live very long.
So the stiffness for us is very important. Just by walking, you have an additional energy expenditure.
The real want to be dormant, or do we want to serve humanity?
These people live to 100 at the highest rates in the world. And these secrets can help every one of us to get every good year we can get out of this body of ours. That is the promise of Blue Zones.
So very, very proud of 1.0 for that work that he did. It won 3 Emmys, including Beating Out Days of Our Lives for one of the categories. Very proud of that. And for 2 weeks in 2024, it was #1 in the world on Netflix across all categories for viewership until a children's pirate TV show dethroned it. But we've got a great brand. You could argue post-pandemic, Americans, consumers, families are thinking about things like longevity, like connection, like purpose, as Mike was talking about, like well-being more than ever. So it's not a surprise that we've got ourselves in the zeitgeist of longevity and well-being. I'd argue we're the #1 brand. And when you have a brand, you have to protect the brand. You have to make sure you have the right partners, the right communities, the right ambassadors. And if you play your cards right, it's got great tactical value for community engagement. It is the reason why a restaurant owner would want to join an Edinburg movement, why a UTRGV would want to become a Blue Zone certified campus, why students would want to get out and hit the streets to represent the Edinburg Blue Zone project, why a mayor would get excited about running with this, pun intended. Dan Sr., he's an investigative journalist. That's his forte. It's what he loves. He continues to tell the story of the longest lived people through a whole bunch of different mediums. But we're not here to talk about the original Blue Zone story. We're here to talk about an Edinburg idea. But before we get to that, the original Blue Zones. So if you have not read one of the books or watched one of the Netflix, it's okay, because I'm going to tell you all the secrets right now in the next half an hour. These are the 5 original Blue Zones around the world that we've studied from a longitudinal standpoint over 20 years. Really embedded ourselves with these people. You're going to meet some of these people, these centenarians. And these 5 Blue Zones are demographically confirmed, geographically defined places where people reach age 80, 90, and 100 at 10 times the rate that we do in the United States. 4 out of 5 are at or below the poverty line. And of the 350 100-year-olds, 90-year-olds that we spent time with, not a single one pursued health. Not a single one pursued a long life, or love, or fellowship, or purpose. Just like nobody in South Texas or the rest of the United States pursues type 2 diabetes. In both cases, the good and the bad, it ensues as a byproduct of 2 very simple things: your environment and your community. Where you live and who you spend your life with. The squad and the architecture of choices that are all around you. That shapes you way more than individual discipline ever will. Before I take you to one of these Blue Zones, this is more than just observational research. This is more than a National Geographic story. This is epidemiology, demography, gerontology. This is real gold standard science that continues to be validated. That continues to be validated even to this very day. All right, our first Blue Zone, the island of Sardinia, off the coast of Italy. Here is ground zero for the longest lived men on planet Earth. In America, we produce 100-year-old man for every 5,000 births. In the highlands of Sardinia, just the highlands, you can see the hot spot where the phenomena takes place. They produce 500-year-old men for every 1,000 births. So it's a perfect inversion. They live isolated, double isolated. Not only are they on an island, but they're in the highlands of that island. It's like going back in time to the Bronze Age, to the time of Christ. A cluster of 14 villages, about 40,000 inhabitants. And here you have 102-year-old men riding motorcycle, chopping wood, and beating a guy 60 years younger in an arm wrestle. These men were studied by the University of Rome. Many of the Blue Zones were actually studied before Blue Zones got there. And for these gentlemen, the University of Rome found 3 commonalities that attributed most highly plausibility to a long life. One was barley consumption. They all munched on a lot of barley. We thought that was interesting. Number 2 was the number of daughters they had. Men with 4 or more daughters tended to reach age 100 at higher rates than those that did not have 4 or more daughters. And we don't know if that's because daughters stick around and take care of mom and dad while sons fly the coop, or any man that can survive 4 teenage daughters for 15 years straight is worthy of a triathlon stamina. But it was the 3rd commonality that Blue Zone seized upon, and this is our first Power 9 of the afternoon. Their profession. In the lowlands of Sardinia, the men are not an anomaly for longevity, and they're farmers. In the highlands, the pests, the soil, the climate is no good for farming. Instead, these men are sheep and goat herders. So the first Power 9, they are moving naturally every single day. These guys are walking the equivalent of a 5K. They're getting their steps in. Every single day, walking with their flock. They get a good night's sleep. Wake up when the sun is warm in the sky. They walk with their sons, with their brothers, with their friends. They're getting vitamin D. Turns out that walking on uneven terrain is really good for hip health. So they have a fraction of the rate of hip fractures that their Italian counterparts do. So it's not just about walking on flat ground, but the topography helps them. They have a portable diet. You can go to bluezones.com, find a whole bunch of free recipes. This is a sourdough bread. Who's here into sourdough bread? Any sourdough bread fans? Yeah? There's always a few. This is called pan de vida, and it's living with a bacteria called lactobacillus. And when you eat it, your blood sugar goes down instead of spiking like most bread does. They do eat some dairy, although it's grass-fed sheep's milk as opposed to corn-fed cow's milk like we do here in the United States. It's got a good mix of omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids. But by and large, all the Blue Zones are plant slant. They are eating 80 to 85% plant food. Whole foods is what we call them here in the United States. Beans, legumes, greens, roots, squashes, fruit. That's what they're munching on. These guys particularly love to munch on naps. I'm sorry, not naps. Nuts. They like a nap afterwards. Naps and nuts is their combination. I actually have a t-shirt that says that. They do eat a little bit of animal protein. The Blue Zones are not vegans. So they do eat a little bit of animal protein, and they get super, super, super excited when it's the Sabbath. Although it's about the size of a deck of cards. It's not your T-bone 12-ounce steak. And good news for most Americans, they do partake in happy hour. Nothing like muddy boots to add terroir to your bouquet. And it's an interesting kind of wine. By the way, it's not about the alcohol. It's about the ritual of getting together with people and downshifting over a healthy meal over a glass of red wine. For them, that's their downshift. But this wine is actually kind of interesting for people who are wine enthusiasts. It's called Cananau. Usually when you are fermenting wine, you strip the skins and the seeds from the grapes throughout the fermentation process. Cananau wine is the only wine that I know of in the world that keeps the skins and the seeds in throughout the fermentation process, which is where all the antioxidants are in a grape, all the good flavonoids are in a grape. It's arguably a healthier form of wine, and in their book, it's a medicine they apply daily. Influencers, the older you get, the more of a community influencer you are. So the TikTok stars are the elders in the communities versus the youngers in the communities. They are very visible, constantly out in the community, volunteering, helping out, doing chores for folks. And then here we see a wonderful phenomenon that is found in many amphibious mammals. So not just humans, but many amphibious mammals, that family units that have a grandparent present, the youth have lower rates of infirmity and higher rates of social adjustment and education. Guess who else benefits by being kept close to the family unit? Grandma and grandpa, abuela and abuelo, to the tune of 7 years of added life expectancy. We call this Power 9, loved ones first. Keep them close. All right, women, longest lived women on planet Earth in the archipelago of Okinawa, Japan, a hard scramble of rocks in the South Pacific. They have been subjected to hurricanes, tsunamis, invasions, famines since the dawn of time. And yet here we have the longest lived women on planet Earth. These women have the best longevity profile of men or women on the planet. They live 7 good years longer than the average American, 5 times as many 100-year-old women, and a fraction of the rate of cancers, breast cancers, and cardiovascular disease that kills so many women in our country. And they have the longest disability-free life expectancy. In America, everybody will go through what clinicians and healthcare actuaries call a morbidity period, which is the last 5 years of our lives. And most of us will spend 90% of our total life healthcare spend in that last 5 years. In this country, that 5-year period is expanding to 7 years. It's getting more expensive, and it's not getting any better. Here, these women, their morbidity period is compressed to under a year. So they live long, good, rich lives. And when they die fast, painlessly in their sleep. It's the best of both worlds. Their world revolves around their gardens, especially as they get older and their kids move on. These women are doing 50 air squats every single day, tending to their garden, hosting people on their living room dens on the floor, which is the old way of doing things. They take care of their gardens take care of them. This is the Goya melon, the bitter melon. It's a popular one. They chop it up into chunks, put it in a stir fry. It's scrumptious, cleans your blood, kills certain cancer-causing blood cells. What's happened to obesity in America in the last 40 years? That's right. 2/3 going on 75% of Americans are overweight or obese. Here they have this great way of addressing quantity. They have a 3,000-year-old Confucius adage, called Hari Hachi Bu. Hari Hachi Bu translates to stop when you're 80% full. And it's a virtuous saying that was born when times were more Spartan, when they didn't know when their next meal was going to come, or when their food was going to run out. So they would say Hari Hachi Bu as a virtue of moderation. These women still recite this before every meal today in 2026, but it serves a different purpose. Today it serves the purpose of mindful eating. Mindful eating, giving your stomach some time to let your brain know that you're full. Isolation and loneliness. Who here is familiar with the scourge of isolation and loneliness that's happening in the United States today? It's statistically as bad for your health as smoking a pack of cigarettes every single day if you're clinically isolated, which means you don't have 3 best friends. In 1970, the average American had 3 best friends. Right before the pandemic, that had gone down to 1.5. What do you think it is post-pandemic for most Americans? And by the way, this didn't help. This is not helping social isolation. In Okinawa, they got this great cultural institution that we've operationalized at Blue Zones called a moai. And a moai is a group of 4 or 5 boys, 5-year-olds, 4 or 5 girls, 5-year-olds. Mom and dad bring them down to town square. And those 4 or 5-year-olds are moai, and they travel through life together. And they are going to take care of 2 things. Take care of each other and take care of their community. Through thick and thin. On screen is a moai that's been going on for 95 years. The women sitting at the table have an average age of 101 years old. And they still get together every day, gossip about their kids, gossip about the neighborhood like they'll do, drink a little sake every now and then, argue about who that hot guy liked more in 1955. But the power is that nobody's forcing them to do it. Nobody's being paid to be there and to check in on each other. It's a natural thing, it's an organic thing, it's a cultural thing. Who can tell me the 2 most dangerous years for an American from a mortality standpoint? The years you're most likely to die. I'll tell you. The year you're born, because we're all vulnerable in that first 12 months, and the year you retire. Why is that? I was a firefighter for 10 years, and I watched senior firefighters count down the days until their pension vests. And the day that pension vest, they retired, we had a big ceremony, and then I'd find out 6 months later that they had passed away. What happened? Did they get wild, risky behavior? No. They found the lazy boy chair, and they let atrophy in. And atrophy of the body leads to atrophy of the mind, leads to atrophy of the spirit, and you're dead. You know what the Okinawan word for retirement is? Does not exist. It's a completely fabricated Western construct that we made up. And we made up for good reasons, mainly worker rights, which I tend to agree with. But it's evolved into this idea that we have 2 lives. A life of productivity, and then one day, arbitrarily, there's punctuation, and then we're supposed to have a life of repose and be done. In Okinawa, instead of retirement, they have a vocabulary for purpose. For purpose, specifically ikigai. Ikigai, which translates to the reason I get out of bed in the morning. What gets me going? What is my reason for being here? This 88-year-old Kung Fu master's ikigai is passing on the art to the next generation. This 88-year-old's ikigai is he puts on bamboo goggles and a wetsuit and he goes spearfishing. And he uses the catch to go visit his great-grandkids. They use it for their school lunch. And Kamada-san is holding her great-great-great-granddaughter. These 2 girls are separated in age by over 100 years. And we asked her, what does it feel like to hold your descendant that's over a century removed from you? And the translation that she gave through the interpreter came back as like leaping into heaven. United States, we have an original Blue Zone, Loma Linda, California. Loma Linda, California, off the San Bernardino Highway, SoCal. You get there and there's tobacco shops and McDonald's and Wiener Huts, and you're asking yourself, what's so special about this place? Well, it turns out there's a community within the community of Seventh-day Adventists. Seventh-day Adventists are a Christian denomination. They evangelize with health. They get their diet straight from the Bible. Genesis chapter 1 stands 14 through 24. All the trees that bear fruit, all the plants that bear seeds. Talks about beans, legumes, leafy greens. Ostensibly missing is reference to T-bone steaks and flaming hot Cheetos. They don't smoke, they don't drink. Some of them don't drink soda or coffee. They operate a number of spas. They are somehow impervious to the American environment that's made us so unhealthy. They are getting almost 10 years more of life expectancy, despite the fact that they're driving down the same fast food filled highways we are, and they're walking through the same gauntlet of sweet, salty checkout lanes at the gas station and grocery store that we are, and somehow they're rising above. It's not their genetics. It's not their genetics. None of these places are homogeneous populations. Okinawa's been intermarrying with the rest of the South Pacific since the dawn of time. Same in Sardinia. No different here like any other community in the United States or in South Texas for that matter. It's a cultural melting pot. But they are a little bit isolated socially. They have strong bonds to each other. They stick to each other religiously. They celebrate the Sabbath on Saturday instead of on Sunday. So it doesn't matter if the kids got soccer practice or dance or if you got to get a gallon of milk. On Saturday is our day off. On Saturday, we are going to check out and check in. A lot of times that entails a nature hike. The definition of nature hike has evolved over the years. They do healthy food potlucks where they do recipes, they get together, they celebrate, they share their faith. Their superpower is they don't do it sometimes. They do it every time. It's the power is in the routine. They don't go to church one day a week, or rather, occasionally. They go every week, 52 weeks a year. The power is in the routine. I was talking to Bobby earlier today. It's good for an added 5 years of life expectancy just by belonging and showing up to your faith. We meet a Seventh-day Adventist named Ellsworth Wareham. Ellsworth Wareham, multi-millionaire in Southern California. Despite having lots of money, he was quoted $6,000, true story, to build a fence on his property. And he decided he would do it himself. So in the Southern California heat, which you all know heat down here in South Texas, he started digging footings, mixing cement, and hauling lumber, building this fence on his property. And on the third day, he ends up in the OR. But that's not Ellsworth on the table. That's Dr. Wareham on the left, who at the age of 90 was still performing 4 open heart surgeries every single month. Ed Rawlings, another Seventh-day Adventist, he's got his pilot license, he's a cowboy. In the afternoon, he throws up rooster tails. And Marge Deton, 104 years old, her husband died when she was in her 70s. So she spent the last 30 years of her chapter of life as a widower, and she was depressed for a long time until she rediscovered volunteerism. So she wakes up every day, pumps iron, rides her bike, eats steel-cut oats, washes it down with a prune juice shooter, as she puts it, and then she goes and gets in her whipped beer-colored Cadillac, and she speeds 20 miles past the speed limit, which we don't condone, and volunteers at 4 different community centers, including 2 senior centers, every single day. And she's got a great sense of humor. It says the best thing about 104 is that there's no peer pressure. So we wrote this up in blue zones. We went out and found the last 2 blue zones, the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica, relative abject poverty compared to the United States, compared to South Texas. And yet, if you can reach age 50 here, according to the World Health Organization, you have the highest probability of making it to 100 than anywhere else on Earth. So if you can make it to 50 here, highest probability of making it to 100 anywhere else on Earth, despite not having a DHR Health, or a Walgreens, or a Whole Foods Market, or all of these things that we associate with amazing, lasting health. They don't have any of those things, and yet they outperform us on longevity. I spent a couple of weeks with Doña Panchita. She's got all the blue zones, plants land, she makes her own corn tortillas by hand. She's got multi-generational family, she's got purpose. She's had a stressful life. She had 13 children while she worked 7 days a week as a cook for the local miners for a long, long time. Many of her children passed away before her, which cannot be easy. Don Bonifacio, he's a working cowboy. That's his little brother. Beans. Beans, beans, beans. Blue Zones thinks beans are due for a big comeback. If you're a doomsdayer and like a prepper, beans are your best friend because you can go buy a 40-pound bag of beans. It's cheap and it'll last you forever. We think beans are due for a comeback, penny for penny, pound for pound, more protein than a steak. And it's a fraction of the cost. And so, Blue Zones, we've been doing a lot of things to make beans and other staple foods no longer intimidating. That they're affordable, that they're easy to prep. If you have a crock pot or a rice cooker, you can buy a rice cooker for $19.99. And there's a million recipes. In fact, we just came out with a book called Blue Zone's One Pot Meals. And every meal is designed to be ingredients you can buy at any grocery store, including an H-E-B. Throw it in a crock pot in 20 minutes, crank it up, set it and forget it, and come back and have a delicious meal for your entire family that's good for you and that tastes good. Here, beans is one of what the Costa Ricans call las tres hermanas. Beans, corn, and squash. And they've made a generation worth of recipes based on just those 3 ingredients. I'll note that nowhere in those diets is Wisconsin cheddar cheese, or sour cream, or flour tortillas. So we've got some opportunity here to turn the narrative on cuisine. And our final Blue Zone in Icaria, Greece, an island in the Aegean Sea, known as the land that time forgot. This place did not have maritime ports until World War I. We think they got rid of their ports because they got so sick and tired of being invaded and raided by pirates in the age of antiquity. So utter isolation, beautiful place, and they have the purest form of the Mediterranean diet anywhere else on earth. They've got all the Blue Zones, they've got walking environments. It's impossible to be an introvert here because if you don't show up to church or if they don't see you walking around to the market, people come knock on your door and they're like, hey, where you at? Some strong social fabric. This picture was taken at 3 in the morning at a wedding. The man on the left is 88, the guy on the right is 93, and neither of them were invited to the wedding. They both just heard there's a party in their town and they showed up. We meet an Icarian man, Stomitis Moriartis. Stomitis Moriartis, World War II veteran. He saw theater, he saw combat in Italy during World War II. He got injured, he could not get his injury fixed in Icaria, there wasn't no health care. So he got on a frigate to the United States. Lands in Detroit, gets his arm fixed. He's a hardworking man, hardworking Greek man, finds success as a painter, marries a Greek-American girl, has a couple sons, buys a Chevrolet, moves out to the suburbs. And then in the late 70s, early 80s, he gets diagnosed by 3 separate doctors, terminal lung cancer. After some grieving, he decides he's going to move back to Icaria. And the burial costs will be a fraction of what they are. He'll reconnect with old friends. So he moves back in with mom and dad, him and his wife, when they're like 60. And after a while, he starts feeling good. He's reconnecting with old friends. He's breathing the air. And he decides, I'm going to plant a vineyard. And I'm not going to be around to drink the wine, but my wife will, and she'll think of me. And I love that. So fast forward to 2005, we meet the guy who's still alive 30 years later, producing 200 liters of wine a year out of this vineyard. And we're like, Stomitis, what is your secret? What happened to all those doctors? He's like, well, I actually called all those doctors to see what happened to my lung cancer diagnosis and prognosis. And you know what they said? Well, what? They said nothing because they were all dead. That was a little harsh by Stomitis. He goes, Midas, what is your secret? He goes, I don't know. Honestly, I just forgot to die. I just forgot to die. But it sounds flippant. But he nailed it. None of these people were pursuing health. None were pursuing a long life full of love and fellowship and connection. For all of them, it ensued as a byproduct of where they lived and the people that they spent that life with. So let's recap the Power 9, the 9 lessons I promised you at the beginning. Besides Marge Jeton, none of them hit the gym and lived an otherwise sedentary lifestyle. They had hobbies that got them moving, they had friends that got them moving, or they lived in environments where it was impossible not to get around moving naturally. Raise your hand if you walked to school when you were a kid. Okay? About 50% of the room. Now raise your hand if your kids walk to school. Not a single hand. Not a single hand. 1970, the average American kid walked 1.5 miles every single day to school. Free physical activity. Today, almost none, even though it's safer today. And what has childhood obesity and childhood diabetes done in the same period of time? It's skyrocketed. So think about environment. These people that we met today are not living stress-free lives. They are stressed. They get cortisol spikes just like we do. They get anxiety just like we do. They worry about money. They worry about their kids. In fact, I bet most of them have a more hard-scrabble life than we do. But they have rituals and strategies to downshift. Whether it's happy hour for the Sardinians, ancestor veneration for the Okinawans, prayer for the Seventh-day Adventists, family for the Costa Ricans. These things, you have to identify the things that help you release that stress. And then purpose. They have purpose. They have ikigai. They have their why that they move forward with. It keeps them going. Eat wisely. They have a very different diet than the standard American diet. They stop when they're 80% full. They have smaller plates. So believe it or not, if you replace your 10-inch plates with 8-inch plates, you'll eat fewer calories. Another hack is when you cook dinner with your family, pre-plate the food in the kitchen and leave the main dish in the kitchen and then go eat your dinner at the dinner table. But if you bring the main dish to the dinner table and you get caught up in conversation talking about the vaqueros, you're not realizing what you're doing. You're refilling that plate, and you might be full. You might be hari hachibu. Plant slam, predominantly 80% meals, and then wine at 5 or friends at 5. It's not about the alcohol, obviously. It's about fellowship, a healthy meal, and sharing the journey. And speaking of sharing the journey, this all rests on a fundamental fact that don't do it alone. Don't ask people to do it alone. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. We know from the CDC that your 3 best friends have a 156% contagion factor on your habits. So if your 3 best friends' idea of a good time is going to the bar, smoking cigarettes, drinking, watching too much Sports Center, maybe don't dump those friends, but augment with people who want to go bird watching, people who want to go train for a triathlon or volunteer or attend a Blue Zones keynote. How do we get this to work for Edinburg? Let's switch gears. How do we get this to work for Edinburg? Edinburg is not alone. Edinburg is unique, but it's not alone. In the macro headwinds that are blasting us all in the face in this country. Chronic disease exploding. Depression, isolation, loneliness exploding. Aging population, baby boomers, large demographic ever, hitting 65. Post-COVID aftershocks, burnout, health disparity. The average American celebrates just one disease-free birthday after the age of 65. That is ridiculous, y'all. The shelf life of the human body is about 90 years. That's kind of how long we've evolved to live. And it's basically long enough to have kids, see our kids have kids, and then from an evolutionary standpoint, our usefulness dissipates. In the United States, life expectancy is 78. So we're leaving 12 years that could be really good years on the table. In addition to our elders, our chief science officer at Oxford recently published the World Happiness Report, which is a gold standard qualitative and quantitative report on how people are experiencing their lives, what makes them happy or unhappy. And the United States, for the first time in 20 years of this report, fell out of the top 20 happiest nations on earth. And it wasn't because of our baby boomers, and it wasn't because of our millennials. It was because of our youth. Most of us will go through the U shape of happiness in our lives. This is a very well-established line graph that most of us will go through. When we're young and dumb and carefree, so we're pretty happy. We don't know any better. Things are easy peasy. Then we get out of school and we get into debt. We make some bad choices. We get that first job. We decide to add kids and a wife or a marriage to that situation. That doesn't help. This is called midlife crisis down here. Kids get older, marriages get wiser, families get wiser, you start figuring out work, you start figuring out your finances, and then you end up relatively happy, peaceful in that last phase of life. What this tells us is that American youth are hitting midlife crisis before they get out of high school. That the anxiety, the stress, the coping is overtaking them before real life shows up on their doorstep. And guess what? iPhones have not helped. Social media has not helped. And all this despite the fact that we spend 8x more than our peer nations on health care. 8x more. $5 trillion per year on sick care, on health care. And we're getting a worse return. We have lower life expectancy, we have more stress, we have more chronic disease. It's exploding. About 90% of that spend is on preventable chronic disease. Don't get me wrong. You get a car accident. You break your leg playing soccer. You get a genetic congenital disease, cancer. There's nowhere in the world I'd rather be than the United States. American healthcare is full of heroes and good science. But the fact of the matter is 90% of what we're spending money on and what we're working on is preventable chronic disease, and we're not even preventing them. We're spending our money on managing symptoms. So it's inherently reactive. We wait till they get sick, and then we give them episodic care. Go to the doctor's office, they tell you what to do, see you in 12 months. But of course, health happens in between the doctor's visits. Traditional prevention in America has been around diets, supplements, and gym memberships, exercise, which I think everybody in this room can agree, those things give us short-term wins, but long-term failures. Unless you're Tom Brady or Serena Williams or Messi, and you have a private chef and a personal trainer that's going to cook you delicious, healthy food and keep you exercising every single day, for the other 99.999% of us, we have to rely on individual discipline to do those things. Hence, short-term wins, long-term failures as a public health policy. What happens to gym memberships on January 2nd every single year? Skyrocket. That's exactly the point. So how do we do this? What does Blue Zones offer that the South Beach diet could, or these other things, or triathlons can't do? Well, we asked ourselves that question. How do we start with an unhealthy community and turn the ship around to be healthy? We saw an example of a plucky young public health grad student who did that in North Karelia, Finland. North Karelia, Finland had the dubious distinction of being the #1 place in the world for middle-age heart attacks amongst men. 45, 50, 55-year-old men were dying at the highest rates anywhere else in the world. They had a very butter-rich diet. Butter, cream, pig. And then this public health grad student came in the 80s and instituted an approach that lowered middle-age mortality by 80% and kept it there 30 years. So that's sustaining power. That's permanency. How did he do it? He recognized that individual discipline is a muscle and muscles fatigue. So don't think that all you have to do is educate people and then they'll be able to pursue the best lifestyle. That's only part of the equation. You also have to set up the policies, the environment, the places that they have their health choices on, and the people that they surround them with. That's what Blue Zones does. We partner with ready cities, ready employers, ready schools, ready policymakers to hire a local team. That local team's got the X on the forehead to be the catalyst, to follow through on the fancy speeches and the big mayor and CEO announcements. Who's going to follow through? Who's got the X on the forehead? So we hire a team, people from Edinburg, salary, benefits, bonuses, steering committees, subcommittees, Blue Zones, Gallup. We'll talk about Gallup. They come in and measure it. It's a total NUCO. It's a total apparatus. And what's that apparatus going to do? They're going to go out and get a critical mass of people, places, and policy. Looking to get 10 to 15% of people excited about this, making it their story, taking a pledge, getting in their own moais, their triathlon moais, or pickleball moais, or reading moais, or mahjong moais, or whatever moais people come up with. Connecting them with purpose workshops to think about their why. If somebody tells you their why, their follow-through spikes. Cooking demonstrations. What if we did one-pot meal tutorials for all the moms that want to come and show up in Edinburg, or all the college students? And we did one-pot meal series, teaching them how to do affordable, delicious, healthy, whole food, one-pot meals. And by the way, based on what I know about Edinburg and how you show up and show out for things like the race with the mayor and other things, I don't think 10-15% of Edinburg is actually, I think that's actually conservative. Places. So one of the things that the local team would do is we would train them to go out door to door. And by the way, college towns are great for this because students and grad students unleash to help support this work. Getting restaurant owners, schools, employers, grocery stores, churches to join the movement, to become Blue Zones approved. It means we're going to give them a menu of evidence-based best practices, things that are based on a school or a restaurant or an employer, and they're going to say, we're going to pick off this menu of 110 things, we're going to do these 36, and you can hold us to it. And we're going to make these cost-neutral tweaks that make the healthy choice the easy choice for our campus, for our food, for our congregation, for our classroom. And then the final P, which is why it's so boosting to hear Mayor Ochoa and your city council, city commission talk about policy. The fact that you're already doing things like the Freddie Gonzalez bike and hike trail and other things around built environment, that's the kind of snowball stuff that we want to be a part of. Food systems, tobacco, alcohol, getting a plurality of policies passed. Maybe some that are already in the strategic plan, maybe some are reach goals that we can do together to go and achieve. And as you can see, there's a lot going on this slide. It's not a silver bullet. It's not a point solution. It's a silver buckshot. It's transformation. Anybody ever read any Malcolm Gladwell? Any Malcolm Gladwell? Okay. Well, he's got this concept called tipping point. Critical mass theory. If you get enough of these going, it becomes autonomous and spontaneous. If you get enough of these going, you are literally making the healthy choice, the easy choice for people. 80% of the health choices people make, you and me, every day, most of them we make unconsciously. We don't even know that we're making a healthy choice or an unhealthy choice. And if we can pull this off, and believe it or not, 3, 4, 5 years, you can mimic the effect of living in a blue zones. All right, Walter Willett from Harvard University has seen this work in some of our early communities. Smart guy, he's seen a lot of different interventions. It spawned a story of demonstration, a story of communities using self-determination around this work. Former Surgeon Generals of the United States have saluted this work, especially Dr. Vivek Murthy, who declared a campaign against isolation and loneliness. Over 90 cities in this country have become Blue Zones approved, or on the way to becoming Blue Zones approved. What's great about that is we don't pretend to be the end state. We don't have all the answers. But we've got 15 years and 90 plus communities worth of practice. So we can bring those best practices, what worked, what didn't work, what might work here, what works here that we've never seen before, and we want to add jet fuel to that. So it's iterative. It's also not a panacea. We don't solve everything. We stick to our lane of well-being, our lane of more good years. One of the things that we've learned is when you get the wins, celebrate the wins. Freaking get those megaphones and holler to your neighbors, to the state, to the country, when that restaurant becomes Blue Zones approved, that elementary school becomes Blue Zones approved, that policy gets passed, that community event that happens. That stuff reinforces the behaviors that you want to see. Washington, D.C. recently has taken an interest in anything that will stem the tide of sick care spend in America. And I'll show you this quick video and we'll start to wrap up from another community here in Texas, actually 10 years ago, that looked at this work.
When we rode into Fort Worth 3 years ago, Mayor Betsy Price was on a mission to rescue her beef-obsessed, obesity-plagued city.
You guys are on life support here. It's not so good.
We're really way down there.
Back then, they were one of America's least healthy cities, with soaring healthcare costs, stressed-out commuters, and overweight school kids. But the health-conscious mayor found inspiration thousands of miles away, in remote places where people live longer and healthier than anywhere else on Earth. National Geographic fellow Dan Buettner discovered the Blue Zones a decade ago. He took us to one of them, Sardinia, a couple of years ago.
The longest lived men on the planet live right around here.
People here are always on the move, often up hills, eat a mostly plant-based diet, and wash it down with a glass of wine. Family ties are important too, common threads throughout most Blue Zones.
What you've learned is there's no silver bullet.
It's 20 or 30 little things, but they're little things that you can transport from places like Sardinia and bring them home and have them work for you.
Back in Fort Worth, the mayor asked Buettner to help her do just that, convincing big steakhouses to put healthier choices on the menu.
Portobello mushroom is completely different. Acorn squash?
Having police hand out fresh vegetables and fruit instead of tickets, and encouraging everyone, even Sunday morning churchgoers, to exercise.
I didn't recognize that girl anymore.
Latasha Dandy says the Blue Zones project inspired her to shed 70 pounds.
My goal was to start changing little things to feel better, and then it was like I woke up and the weight was gone.
She's not alone. Fort Worth's child obesity rates have dropped 6%. In fact, a Gallup poll of America's healthiest cities says Cowtown is changing its tune.
We've jumped from 62 to 47. We've jumped up 15 slots in 4 years. That's a long way.
They say everything's bigger in Texas. Well, it's the little things imported from places like Sardinia that are making Fort Worth healthier. Cynthia McFadden, NBC News, Fort Worth, Texas.
So That's Cowtown, USA. I think if Cowtown, USA can do it, a place like Edinburg, it's a much lower bar. Outcomes, as you might imagine, when you improve not just somebody's waistline, but you improve their sense of well-being, their positivity, their optimism, you give them momentum. We've all seen it, we've all experienced it. They become more than just a healthier person, they become a better version of themselves. The same is true when you aim at improving not just longevity, but well-being at scale. And what you see on screen, it might be a little small to see here, but what it's saying is these communities that have used well-being as a North Star metric have seen more than just healthcare outcomes or population health outcomes. They've seen economic development outcomes, productivity, workforce savings, recruitment, retention, follow-on grants, lower obesity rates for kids, which has a huge compounding effect on risk factors for disease in their lifetimes. It truly is the North Star metric. A lot of times we think about well-being as the bell cow. And if any of you have ever been to a dairy farm, there's a bell cow. And so goes the bell cow, so goes the other cows. So if you're the farmer and it's time to bring cows back in from pasture, you don't have to herd all the cows. You just got to get the bell cow back into the barn and the other cows will follow it. We believe well-being is the bell cow, is the North Star metric. We partner with Gallup, which has the instrument. It's called the Well-Being Index, the instrument for baseline and measuring well-being improvement before and after a project like this. And Blue Zones, actually, we put our fees at risk that we're going to move the dial on that bell cow. This slide, again, hard to read on these screens, but it just shows 6 different communities or employers or school districts that moved the needle on well-being, on the Gallup Well-Being Index, and produced an economic translation that dwarfs any point solution that they've spent money on. So when you invest in prevention, and you guys all know this, it compounds in value over time. And the same is true if you let disease go unchecked. That also compounds in cost and burden. This is not taxpayer-funded work. This is not tax. I don't think Mayor Ochoa would have been on stage talking about Blue Zones if this was taxpayer-funded work. This is private sector-funded work. This is work that aligns to real deep strategy for hospital systems, for health plans, for community foundations. It's not a surprise. Methodist Healthcare Ministries sponsored this initial phase. This is right up their alley, right up their mission. And this is what they sponsored. They spent a year thinking about where is the right place to try this? Where is the demonstration site? Where is their readiness? And narrowed it down to 4 cities: McAllen, Mission, Pharr, and Edinburg. And we don't know yet if one's moving forward with a full project, 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them, none of them. But that's why we're here. And we don't think we'd be here if it was none. We spent a lot of time doing due diligence, learning, meeting with the mayor. This is my 5th visit here in the last 2 months. Methodist Healthcare Ministries has been here for decades and decades and decades. But at the end of the day, we do think there's going to be a pretty big announcement and declaration, not just to tell the country or the state, but to tell the people here what we're aiming at. This is the process that's happening right now. Right now, we're in this phase, the assessment, readiness assessment phase. I call it the dating phase. You're dating us, we're dating you. Is this a good fit? Is this a good time or is this a bad time? Is the school going to get behind this? Is the city going to get behind this? Is DHR Health going to get behind this? Or is this going to be pushing a rope uphill? We don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. So we're doing focus groups. We are doing qualitative and quantitative analysis. We have healthcare economists coming in to take data with Gallup, doing some initial sampling of well-being in the region. We're doing asset mapping and inventorying what's working, what's not working, meeting with leaders, and we'll turn in our homework. We'll turn in our homework by the 4th of July to say, hey, here's what we found, here's what we recommend, here's what a blueprint could look like, and then you all will receive that and be able to say, you guys missed the mark, that's not us, or yeah, that's who we want to become, and how do we do it together? If it's a yes, then we go into the 9-month foundation period where we're literally building a new co. We're hiring the team, we're putting together the Edinburg blueprint, Gallup's coming in to do a full oversample of measurement. We are designing the Edinburg blueprint and stacking hands on this is going to be the Edinburg story, and we're all going to be accountable to executing on that plan. And at the end of that 9 months, transform. That's when we unleash, hit the pavement, door to door, to get a critical mass of people, places, and policy. It's process outcomes in the first couple years, but then those process outcomes, if you hit them, lead to outcomes, like the ones I was sharing earlier in the out years of 3, 4, and 5. And this talks a little bit more about what exactly activities are happening in this initial phase that Methodist Healthcare Ministries funded. And you can see we want to respect your time. We want to get to a disposition by June. Are we doing this or are we not? Your time is too precious, the city's time is too precious, our time is too precious. So this is breakneck speed. This is rapid cycle. What does readiness look like? Leadership, resources, evidence-based design, and accountability. These are the things that have been the pitfalls of public health initiatives for the last 30, 40 years. They don't have enough resources, they have a poor evidence-based design, or it's a silver bullet, not a silver buckshot approach. There's no accountability, there's no incentive alignment to outcomes. And then leadership. Leadership. You cannot wait for consensus. You won't get consensus on anything. Everybody in here knows that. All you have to do is turn on the news to know that you won't get consensus on anything. But you can get plurality. You can get a handful of us at first, like what's in this room. And some key VIPs, like a mayor, a school superintendent, a faith-based leader, a local influencer. And with leadership and plurality, you can go and get this done. At the end of the day, what does everybody need? And this is according to a 101-year-old grandma. She said, everybody needs 4 things in life. Something to do, someone to love, some way to give back, and something to look forward to. And if we can do that for ourselves, and for our kids, and for our employees, and for our neighbors, and for our residents and constituents, they will go out and transform themselves, and then they'll transform each other. And you don't have to do it for them. But as leaders, and you're all leaders here because you're all civic-minded or else you wouldn't be here, it's not enough to have the wisdom to know that what I've said today is human and true about the blue zones and about the best practice. It's not enough to have the wisdom to know that to make the healthy choice, the easy choice is the right choice. It requires courage and hard work to make it the unavoidable choice. And if we can follow through on that, not only is Edinburg ready, but we too can forget to die. That's it, everybody. Thank you very much.